Man, oh man. There's a lot of great things I can say. I'm not sure where to start. I took a moment after reading the chapter several times just to come to terms with how I'm feeling. I'm sure you guys can understand or share my sentiments where it's just like, I can't believe we're getting this right now. I can't believe we're getting not Rox's entire story, but so much. Oda typically just gives us a little bit, then just goes away from it, right? Especially the thing we want the most. He got right back to Rox in this chapter. Again, this was supposed to be Harold's backstory, Harold's flashback, of course, leading up into Loki's somewhat character understanding and understanding Loki's backstory and why he is the way he is. We got a full-on Rox backstory. Not the entire thing, obviously, but we got enough where we can make some very strong opinions, some very strong statements. I mean, let us bring it down. One Piece chapter 1155 is out, and guys, here's my dissertation. Now, let's talk about it, right? No cover story this time. I was really excited and looking forward to a cover story this week, right? We got a cover art, no cover story. So we're not going to dwell on this. I would have liked to find out who that grave belonged to. Is somewhat speculation about it. Either way, let's talk about 1155, right? The opening scene, again, this is the somewhat establishing a glimpse of who Rox is. Oda is giving us a peek into the past of how things transpired with Loki and how he became so enamored with Rox. Amazing scene. Reason being, Rox acknowledges this is Harold's kid. Okay, he says, all right, how can the quickest way I can get in contact with Harold, again, acknowledging who the short interactions he had with Harold, how can I get his attention? Okay, I'll tell him his son is in trouble. That could get anybody's attention, right? For the most part, Rox comes across as very reasonable, saying, hey, you're his kid. You can reach him, right? You can still reach him even though he's away. He's, all right, let's just tell him you're in trouble and come quick. I just watched Next Friday, so it makes me either. Craig's in trouble, come quick. Tell him you can call on. Anyway, if you know, you know. Either way, he says that, and Loki, he's still young. He has no idea how the world works. There's hierarchy, there are levels to this. And so he thinks big man, big giant, stronger than small man, small human. Au contraire. Oh, Loki, you're so mistaken. And I think what I loved about this scene is that Rox tried to be reasonable. Loki, again, ingrained, you can say racism, but I think it's just from youth. No experience with the world and just looking at it from the prism of his dad is weak for conspiring with these humans. So naturally there is a disdain, but also you could look at it that his dad is away from him because of these humans. So naturally the disdain grows even more. And for him, again, fellowship, I guess, communion, that is viewed as weakness, considering what they are in Giants where they're propped up to be so powerful. But Loki has several traumatizing experiences. He doesn't see the world yet. So his feelings are completely valid. I'm not mad at him for feeling the way he feels. And Rox's response, I love it even more because then he clips him, right? He hits him straight up. And then he says, oh, look, Loki's in trouble. Now I guess Harold has to come quick, right? Love that moment. Because I tried to tell you, just go tell him that. Now it's real. Now what you gonna do? You gotta tell him the same thing. So shout out to Rox D. Zebek. I'm not gonna lie, guys. Reading this chapter, I became a Rox stan. I'm like, this guy's incredible. And this is gonna sound, it's not gonna sound crazy. You guys agree. Rox is making a lot of people look bad. Rox is making a lot of people look bad. Off rip the Admirals. Considering everything that he got through this chapter that they said he did, you're looking at the Admirals like, oof, side eye. But of course, context is lost. But then everything he managed to accomplish and other people still haven't really. Okay, we'll talk about it. But first, swordsmanship. Swordsmanship is brought up sporadically throughout the story, where Oda focuses on it, gives us some tidbits, the importance of it, then he just moves away. Then we go for several hundred chapters, then he talks about swordsmanship again. It is not prevalent throughout the story, the specifics, the importance of swordsmanship. It is sprinkled throughout, but you know that being a swordsman is important, but I would argue that swordsmanship and swords are looked at more as tools than partners throughout the story by characters within the story and even fans. I don't think One Piece has given me the feeling or the urgency or the inclination to care as much about swordsmanship outside of two people, Mihawk and Zoro. And so when we talk about swordsmanship, not that I check out, I somewhat don't know what to expect or how to feel because I do not care about the swordsmanship path outside of those two. And so far in the story, it seems if you ignore Ryuma, nobody else does. We got sprinkles in Wano with Oden talking about two-sword style and the scabbards taking up that mantle trying to hurt Kaido, but that's more symbolic than more of a journey in regard to getting stronger using a specific style. I do like Oda branching off and trying to give us different variations of swordsmanship and how they're used, how they're important. In my opinion, I think it's a little too late because there's only so much you can do to allow the fandom in mass to care about swordsmanship and the different types. Now, retcons could happen where it's like, well, this swordsmanship, this swordsman fought this way, this blade user fought this way, and he's kind of doing that with Rocks. And so what Oda did with Rocks is talk about his specific style. And that's because he was about to hit Loki, so he's giving a reason why the impact is the way it is, as opposed to just completely slicing Loki in half. Before that, though, Loki says to him, you expect my father to drop everything because I'm hurt. And one could think that comes from a standpoint of Loki just being tough and the Elbaf giants and the culture. But Loki is internally questioning, I don't think my dad would come just because I'm hurt. I know my dad cares about me, but I guess I think my dad cares about me, but I don't think he cares about me that much. And so he's projecting almost. And he flips it. You expect my dad to come here just because I'm hurt? And from that dialogue, you're thinking, well, it's a tough kid, right? He doesn't expect his dad to drop something like that just for him, which you could look at as valiant because he's a warrior from Elbaf, and that's the culture there. But that's just internalized struggle and not really believing that your dad feels that way about you. It's honestly sad, but Loki throughout his life seemingly has managed to flip things and craft things in a way so that he doesn't seem vulnerable in front of others. Something small that stood out, but it gets referenced later, so we'll talk about it again in the full context of the situation. Now, back to swordsmanship. How I did that just now, where I talked about swordsmanship, then went away from it and just came back to it, that's how Oda does it. Like, swordsmanship is important. The specifics and the buildup of it hasn't seemingly been that way. So he talks about Rocks and Rocks' swordsmanship, and he says Rocks' swordsmanship was renowned for its brutal impact, akin to a giant hammer or cannon fire. It was said to blow everything in the surrounding vicinity away. It made me think of Divine Departure, where when Roger used it, it sent Odin flying. It did not completely just cut him in half. It was someone like a blunt force sword slash. Now, not saying they're the same thing. However, it could be a specific type where I'm choosing not to cut, but to hit you with the brunt force of hockey. Oda is somewhat creating a divide with swordsmanship and swordsman strength. Now, it's hard to say where this is leaning because I've seen it all, right? I saw it all when I was streaming, where it was like Shanks upscale or Mihawk upscale or whatever. But this is specifying that Rocks and how he fights, he uses his blade, but it's a brutal impact. It is explosive almost, right? It's like an attack that once it hits you, it explodes. Again, it feels a lot like Divine Departure, and one could say this is you using swordsmanship, but it's not focused on the skill, it's focused more on hockey. And that's the focus of this type of swordsmanship that Rocks is renowned for. Again, this is us trying to parse through everything that they're saying and the reasons behind it. Is it Mihawk upscale? Is it Shanks upscale? I really can't tell you. I think for the most part, it is all swordsman upscale because Oda's starting to somewhat create a path. Even though, again, like I said, I think it's a bit too late. Where are we going to go from here? Either way, interesting information. And pointing that out, again, I think it's imperative before he hits Loki, because we're like, well, why didn't Loki just get split in half? Well, no, his swordsmanship is brutal. He uses his blade and it's an impact, right? It's a cutting, it cuts, but it's more of an impact. And so that's why Loki didn't die. He just got hurt. I absolutely love his laugh after Loki gets hurt, because he's like, bro, this could have been so much easier, but hey, if you want to have fun, we can have fun. Love that. I love rocks, man. Love rocks. Now, narrator's back. Might just be me. But while the narrator was doing his thing, started to feel like Hunter x Hunter, man. I'm not gonna lie. Hunter x Hunter, if you haven't read it, watched it, whatever, the narrator is a very important part of a certain arc. And so the narrator kind of gives you how people are feeling, some of the moves that people are thinking about making. It gives you more insight than you normally would have, even when a character is speaking, because it's much more efficient. It felt like this in this string where the narrator jumps in and starts to talk about the Reverie. So the Reverie, that year being 8 years prior, or 56 years ago from the current story, where Harold is at the Reverie and Rox was at the Reverie. They were both at the Reverie. That's when Harold basically was snuck in as a guard. And of course, Rox went there as well that's where he killed the Admiral. So we're getting more context, for the most part, as to what happened when Rox went to Marijoa, the Reverie. We still don't know the specifics of how Rox got in, whether he was a king, whether he was part of the entourage, how things feel considering Rox. How it's framed feels like a nobody that came out of nowhere because his infamy spread after that point. Not saying he was unknown, but his infamy spread. One thing I mentioned was that Rox and his ascension could be akin to Blackbeard's, where Blackbeard pretty much came out of nowhere. Not that he was unknown. He was a commander on Whitebeard's crew, but he had no bounty, right? He had done nothing. So then Blackbeard exploded with 2 bills. So at the end of the day, it could be something like that where they had no idea the demon that they let into the Reverie in Rox. You could have held a king hostage. I mean, even in this chapter, 5 kings were kidnapped. Now, for the most part, it seems like it was only Rox. This feels like a heist. This feels like a planned attack where people were made for distractions. People were made to do this. Because if it's only Rox doing this, guys, there's no contest. He's the greatest pirate of all time. Nobody can come close. If he's by himself, so far it looks like it, doing all this, kidnapping kings, right? Taking out admirals, and then okay, let's talk about this. First, we got to talk about the subscribe button. All right, you guys have been here. You watched this long, right? You liking it? Subscribe to the channel. Look down. Make sure you are subscribed. Like the video as well. That's greatly appreciated. But let's talk about the flower room. All right? Let's talk about the flower room because, oh my God. I want to say easily my favorite part of the chapter, but there's so many things in this chapter that I loved. I can't just say easily my favorite part of the chapter. All right. Either way, the flower room. A conversation seemingly happens. I'm not going to lie to you guys. When I read it initially live, link in the description down below if you want to check the live reaction. When I read it, I wasn't sure if they were having a conversation. It was just like, first of all, it's a lot going on. So I'm taken aback by the information I'm internalizing. Rox is in the flower room casually looking at Emu. Casually. But it's a conversation. The lives of those sovereigns cannot be used to extort Mu. Now, I'm starting to wonder, is there a separation between Emu and Mu? What's going on? Or is it just Emu because of Mu? I don't know. Either way, it's third person. The lives of those sovereigns cannot be used to extort Mu. Whatever. So this is Emu saying, you can't use the kings to I don't care. This moment is so important because it's a few things. This tells me that Rox had been planning. I'm not sure if you guys realize this, but you don't just go to Marijoa. You don't just get here and happen upon the flower room, right? Sabo was going after Cobra. Even Wapol, he was on a random, but he didn't even get to the flower room. So at the end of the day, Rox had information, he had a plan, he had strategy, and he executed it almost perfectly to the point that he's having a conversation with the one atop the world. Those kings cannot be used to extort the sovereign. He says, well, no kidding. But it threw the Holy Land into chaos, right? The narrator jumps back in saying this incident is known and would be known as the first and last of its kind. Because after they did that, they had some renovations, right? They had like, all right, we got to have some more doors for the flower room. We can't just have these same corridors. Maybe it's a secret door. Emu, we just need to protect you better. You okay with that? Sure. Either way, that's not what it says. But it's saying the incident will be the first and last of its kind. Is this talking about up to this point? Or is it talking about all time? Is a narrator omniscient where they're saying this never happens again? Nobody ever makes it again to the flower room. I don't think so. I think this is saying up until this point, first and last. But because I do think other people will make it to the flower room. I think so for sure. Now, the narrator said he claimed to be a Davy Jonesian pirate, right? In that moment, he knew there was nothing he could do. So he withdrew with these words. Just wait. One day, I'll be back. My respect for Zebek went through the roof because I think it's difficult to get to the pinnacle. I think it's even more difficult to see it, to reach there and then withdraw and say, I'm not ready. There's nothing more I can do here. Not many pirates, not many top pirates could get there and do this. This shows, again, his patience or his willingness for patience, his calculation, his dedication to his goals. Luffy would not do this. Luffy's like, we're going to figure it out right damn now, which is one of Luffy's strengths. But Zebek is different. Honestly, so far, he feels like a mixture of Luffy and Blackbeard. Leaning more towards Blackbeard because obviously that's his pops. Calculated, shrewd, evil, honestly devastating, and strong as hell. These are all things that bring the world government to its knees. By kidnapping the kings, the distraction, the admiral, all this for a glimpse. I'm not going to say it's like Thanos, all this for a drop of blood. No. Because that moment, Emu, that was enough. Somebody made it here and he left. He got out. Okay. We saw back then in the flower room before, Emu had swords and different posters. One of them were Blackbeard's. Saturn said that he knows of Blackbeard's lineage. Katarina Devon said Blackbeard is special. It all stems from this man, Rox D. Zebek. How did he know where to go? Everything had to have been calculated. Again, we're not sure how old Zebek is here. However, probably young, 30, in his 30s, early 30s, at worst, maybe, again, a decade or so on the old gen, the old legends. But Zebek, oh my God. I can't get over how much I enjoy the moment of him just there with the pistol. Just taking it all in, the decor, the moment, and saying, I'll be back. But also the discernment. Discernment, it's a skill. I can't do nothing right now. I could wreak havoc. I could try to fight you. Pointless. I'll be back, though. I'll assemble it correctly, and I'll be back. Don't worry about that. Of course, nobody ever finds out about this because that's how the world government operates. Something that important, something that big. Why would we tell the world? Oh, Zebek laid eyes on Emu. Who's Emu? So even his bounty will not reflect exactly how dangerous he is because there are key things being kept away from the world, being kept away from the powers that be because, well, they don't need to know. I feel like sometimes the world government or the powers that be, the five elders, Emu, they don't realize how much they handicap their organization. You withholding key information like that, we're not placing appropriate threat levels to this man that is Zebek. Yes, after he killed an admiral, a bounty was issued, but that bounty should be higher. He didn't just kill the admiral. He killed the admiral, and he got a glimpse of Emu, and he got out of there. That is on a different level altogether. Rox was not normal in a bunch of different ways. In this chapter, we find out even more. We talked about this last week with King Harold and him sneaking into Mary Joa. And I said how that would have been a bad idea. And even in the midst of him being the escort or being a guard for a king, the world nobles, the celestial dragons, they would not care because at the end of the day, everything that's in the world, they believe it belongs to them. And we're seeing here it play out where they're saying, I want one. Damn, he's large. How can I get one? I want to make him my slave. And they're literally attacking him. Now, something I thought about is what if Rox and one of the kings that were kidnapped is one of the king that escorted or king with Harold? At that point, Harold is free game, right? Because it's implied that Rox kidnapped the kings. Again, it makes more sense for him as a distraction, as a way to have leverage against Emu. But again, it's so much had to be done beforehand when it comes to Emu and that entire situation. I don't think the killing an admiral was part of the plan. It just happened to be that way. And again, we would love some context and just to see what happened here. But this is not Rox's flashback. It's not Rox's story. This is supposed to revolve around Harold and Loki. But at the end of the day, we're not going to see everything from Harold, everything from Rox, everything from Loki. I think in due time, just considering just how important a figure Rox is. But man, I would have loved to see just the entire thing play out, which would be an amazing anime special, by the way. If the anime guys are watching, you want to think of an idea. Nah. Oda would never. Oda would never. Absolutely not. But at some point, I think we see it. Either way, Harold is being chased and literally burned alive because they want to make his big, ancient, giant ass a slave. And I get it. I absolutely get it. Well, okay, I'm not going to say I get it like I'm a celestial dragon. But if I was a celestial dragon, I'd want Harold. All right? I'd want that big. So because Rox killed an admiral, they're now using Harold and saying Harold was the reason why it happened. They're calling him the kidnapper, and they're also saying he's the reason for an admiral being dead. And that's a major deal in this world. So now they're running towards each other. And Harold, he's annoyed. He's like, that must be the guy who kidnapped the kings. How dare you use me as a scapegoat? And Rox, he's surprised. A giant in the Holy Land? I thought you guys were out in the boonies. Like, you guys don't come to these places. Either way, rubber meets the road. Something got to happen, and a clash happens. A clash typically is not indicative of strength because multiple people can clash, and it doesn't reflect exactly how strong they are. There's so many different ways to assess strength. Either way, dope panel. Love seeing Harold and Rox go at it. Personally, I'm not surprised at Harold being this strong. I mean, they weren't even touching, right? Now, it didn't look like the skies cleared. The skies didn't split. We didn't see that. You know what I'm saying? Oh, they didn't show it. Maybe it could have happened. Maybe it didn't see it, whatever. But these two being that strong makes sense. I mean, Harold, they've told us multiple times in numerous ways that Harold is one of the strongest, if not the strongest giant ever. I mean, he's the greatest king ever. But he's an ancient giant, incredibly big, incredibly strong. We see what Loki can do, where Loki's prophesized to do what we expect him to be, and Harold is his father. I know we look at Harold, but give him time. He'll come around. He's still young, all right? Either way, I love this moment. Love seeing Rox and Harold and even a conversation in the midst of it where, now I need your name, right? It's like when you meet somebody of equal or high stature, all right, who are you? Because there are not many people like this that I come across on a regular basis. So I love this moment. The thing is, in moments like this, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So they somewhat became, not friends, but they used each other. Because not only the clash blew everyone away, but then it's like, yo, how do I get back to Elbaf? The new world is that way, right? If you survive this, let's meet again, Harold. And Harold, that's not his vibe. He's like, you're a criminal, right? Harold is jumping off the red line. Like, bro, it's almost insane just seeing these amazing pirates, amazing people do things to gain infamy, and they make it almost seem regular, right? Either way, Rox, man. Oda reiterates that Rox took down an admiral moments earlier, and they tried to save the admiral, but he didn't survive. Now, I'm trying to think, could this be an indication of the type of power it is, right? Where it's like, okay, did he do something where it's like they had an opportunity to save him, but he couldn't survive? Like, what do you guys think Rox's power is? Because of everything Rox was doing, it's hard for me to believe he doesn't have a devil fruit. It's just the utility, the movement. I mean, he was just running, so it could be that he's just straight up hockey swordsman. It could be, but man, taking out an admiral, Emu, I'm reading this chapter and I'm losing my mind because I cannot believe just how impressive of a guy, of a character Rox D. Zebek is. I am literally losing it. Either way. In regard to the admiral, I do think whomever this admiral is will be revealed in an SBS or something, and it's going to be important to the story. It's being reiterated too many times to not be relevant. Speculation, people are saying, could be Akainu's dad, Aokiji, whatever. Whomever he is going to be important to the narrative that Oda is going to bring up at some point. I don't think we find out. Oh, it depends. It depends. I was thinking, could we find out in a story or in an SBS? Here's one thing I know. We're certainly going to find out who this admiral was, for sure. So now, after this, Celestial Tribute ship was attacked. But the greatest feat, well, next to killing an admiral, and next to seeing Emu, and next to escaping the Holy Land and invading. Bro, Zebek just did so much, it's hard to pinpoint what's the best thing. Either way, another amazing feat is somebody destroyed the Gates of Justice. Now, how the hell you do that? Do you guys remember the Gates of Justice? How insanely large the Gates of Justice are? How? Who? Zebek. But how? Guys, Rox is making a lot of people look bad. I mentioned the admiral. Admirals. In general, in the Holy Land, of course, there are typically restrictions. Doesn't matter. Killed one and you got away. Get into the flower room. Makes the world government look terrible. Getting out the flower room. Making them look even more terrible. But not only them, we're looking at other people that's supposed to be able to go and do things like this. Somebody mentioned Ginny, and it's like, it's different because here's the thing. There's no doubt in my mind that this specific heist, this specific moment, it required a lot of planning. And knowing Blackbeard, if it's anything he got from his pops, it's the ability to plan, it's the ability of foresight, it's the ability to understand when to walk away, when to strike. Vulnerability is key. And Rox, I mean, opportunist for sure. And we find out even more about how much of an opportunist he is. But either way, the guy's incredible. Now, something that happened after that, I started to think, why? Because they said after the Celestial Tribute ship was attacked, the gates of justice were destroyed, they fled the scene, and the funds were used to fund Rock's activities, right? So obviously that was Roxy's back. But then after that, they said he only used to attack the world government before that. After this moment, he started attacking pirates as well. So why? A few things came into my mind. He now sees what he's up against. He now understands better what he's up against. So ultimately, resources are necessary. I need resources, man. If I'm going to go up against that superpower, I need as much as I can get, from devil fruits to money to artillery to people to strong combatants. I need all I can get, because next time I go back there, I will have enough to topple the top, and I will be the top. That is his goal. And so for Rox, it's not just about attacking the world government at this point. Whomever can get it, because that is my goal. And you can't feel bad for pirates. Generally, pirates are not good people, so you don't feel bad for that. You don't feel bad for them. I can say the most surprising thing, even though there's a theory out there, several theories out there about this, was that Rox, how he acquired his crew was through Davy back fights. And I say officially, Long Ring, Long Land, you can't skip it no more. There's some people out there that actually recommend skipping Long Ring. What is wrong with you? You don't skip anything in One Piece. Maybe Serve Village. I'm kidding. But you don't skip anything. Honestly, I think One Piece and the story and how it's been built over time, there's so much material out there that I don't expect everybody to go and read every SBS, every River card, every Jump Festa message. That's not possible. However, you can at least read the entirety of the canon story or watch the entirety of the One Piece anime to understand what you're watching. Now, I'm never the one that's going to gatekeep how people consume or enjoy media. That's not, but if you ask me, if I had a recommendation, you don't skip anything in One Piece, right? Long Ring, Long Land, upscale, 1000%, because Oda is bringing back Davy back fights, and that's how he acquired more of his. Bro, what? Now, we questioned why were these people following him? Of course, there's a reason behind Rox and his exploits, his strategies, his plans, and they're following him because, of course, the money. He was getting to the money. He was getting to the bag. But why him? So Rox was targeting these pirates through Davy backs. Rox used this and built his crew, which, genius idea. However, it's not organic. These people are not following you because they choose to. They're following you because they have to. That's a completely different thing. Having people with you that have to be there is not the most enjoyable experience. We saw that even later in the chapter where Shiki's like, we don't respect this moron. We don't follow this moron. And he assembled an insane crew off of the Davy back. So I'm like, Rox D's a back? Was it rocks, paper, scissors every time and he chose rocks? I am stunned that this is a thing, because Davy back was something people talk about when Luffy meets Shanks again, that they're going to have a Davy back. And like, now I'm like, well, okay, I'm there, but possibly. But Rox, I mean, this guy, every single situation that he's in, he seems to shine. But I just love how much we're finding out about him. And again, I don't think he's a good person, but I don't think he is as despicable as the world government thinks he is. Maybe from their perspective, considering what he did. You make it all the way to the flower room off the strength? We don't know. What? Danger. Big danger. And you escape after killing an admiral? Big danger. Right? This guy is dangerous. We now get to the scene where now it's back to real time. We're seeing him in Elbaf after Loki got attacked, and he's about to have a conversation with Harold, trying to convince Harold to come and join his crew, because Harold is the last piece that he would need in Elbaf's power to become king of the world. And people are talking about if he had Harold's power, he would become king. And I have something to say to that after this point. However, we're here in Elbaf. A point that I mentioned earlier with Loki and his dad coming there when he was sick. We see Loki, he is now thinking, Dad really came back. This is coincidence. There's no way he came back for me, right? I talked about this where Loki needing some type of love, nurture. Harold taking, bro, why didn't you take Loki with you traveling all around? Like, not only does Loki know his mom doesn't like him or doesn't love him, he doesn't think his dad cares enough about him to leave his explorations and his voyage to come make sure that he's okay. That's how he feels about himself and the people around him, obviously, where he was boiling down everything that Harridan did to his mother's blood. There is severe trauma there with Loki, and he's trying to believe it. He is lost. Either way, we get into Rox. Rox greets Harold like if they're boys, like if they're best buds, like they've known each other. Harold, my man, good to see you, bruh. But I get it. You guys are both in Mary Joie, being chased by the powers that be, and you got out of there. Now you're meeting up again. For Harold, he's like, all right, what does this criminal want? For Rox, he's like, yo, fate, right? Look at us. Huh? Who thought we'd be here? Look at us. For Rox, where my crew, Harold? What's the problem? He's privy, apparently, to some of Harold's negotiations with the world government, saying they're not going to hear you out, right? Right? Well, now's the time. Join the crew. But Harold, I think so far as a character, has been exceptional. Where he started from, to his development, to where he is, to his thought process, to how he assesses situations. Granted, going to Mary Joie and getting set on fire, I don't think that was part of his plan necessarily. He was noble, good intentions, bad decision. But for the most part, Harold, man, he's been knocking it out of the park, even coming back to make sure Loki's okay. W Dad and W King, because he says to him, I can't join you. I'm a king, and that's going to have me lose faith. Or my allies lose faith in me. And you got to remember what the allies did for him in the last chapter, where they fed his country while they were going through their famine and their issues. So at the end of the day, he has a responsibility not only to Elbaf, but to his allies. I can't be seen as a pirate, because that not only puts Elbaf in jeopardy, but it also puts my allies in jeopardy. But they're saying, well, your allies are already government pawns. Like, why does that matter? But you got to think, if Harold is a pirate and now he's associating with these allies, they can use that as a reason, a justification to even replace some of these kings or enforce maybe a higher tax, a stiffer tax on these countries, right? So at the end of the day, this does not make sense for Harold at all. Of course, he's trying to reform his country and work with people and build bridges. So to go from where he's been and how much progress he's made, to be honest, to where Rox is going, saying, if something churns in your stomach, you just crush it. Okay, that's a bit much. Something Rox said, I thought it was profound. He says, what's the point of reaching for something impossible? You got to level the playing field. Where he's saying, this is out of control. There's nothing you can do. Let's bring them down to size so that we can take what we want. Ultimately, it reeks of selfishness. It feels larger than life. It feels like it's impossible. But based on everything that Rox did so far, if I told you one of those things, you'd be like, damn, that's damn near impossible. What are you talking about? So Rox, his entire life has been impossible. But for everybody, they don't have the same dreams, goals, and aspirations. And honestly, most of your crew, they're only following you out of obligation because they lost in a Davy back fight. How can you be so sure and try to climb to the top of the mountain, going against this world superpower with people that honestly don't even want to be there? And we know for a fact one of them did not want to be there, and that's not their goal or ambition. Whitebeard. You're telling me you're trying to convince Whitebeard to go against the world government because he's your crewmate, because you won him in a Davy back fight? Honestly, in God Valley, if they sabotage him on purpose, I wouldn't be surprised. We're here because of the Davy back fight. You're no longer around. Oh, I'm free to do whatever I want. Man. But Harold echoes the sentiment, saying Elbaf has changed. That's how we used to do things, not anymore. And Rox is saying, yo, I can still feel the bloodlust, bro. You still want to do this. I can still feel it pulsating through you. Whitebeard's like, bro, can y'all just eat? And Harold's saying, if you guys continue to follow somebody like this, it's not going to end well. And it's like, Shiki's like, what are you talking about, bro? Ain't nobody following him. Ain't nobody come to see you, Otis. Nah, seriously, Shiki's almost like, what? So Oda props up Rox to like unbelievable levels, and then he brings him back down to size like he was trying to do for the rest of the world through his crewmates. Dog, we're in it for ourselves. If he died, nobody would care. Even Miss Buckin, she's like, yo, I'm here because it's a lucrative opportunity. And then we have Don Marlin. These guys are here for a big score. Pirate Island, right? Apparently, a lot of money was found on the island because it's supposed to be a Pirate Island's graveyard, right? An elephant graveyard. Pirate Island's graveyard, and they found a lot of money. Shadowy organization goes there, found a lot of money. Pirates are now, they're sitting on some good money. And they cut a deal with the world government. If they get the money, if they get the island back, then boom, they get some money, but they're going to keep the island. And Rock's plan is to become the king of it, but of course they get a payout. This is all a score for all of them. But Don Marlon, Capone's dad, he's from the West Blue. Capone's from the West Blue, of course. Ganzui, and we finally see Wangji Ochoko. And there's no telling. You cannot tell me that's not Caribou and Korobu's dad. But finding out that Caribou's dad is somebody that notable, Ochoko, if you don't remember, he was the king of Hachinosu, right? And over Hachinosu, and he's a part of the Rocky Port incident where Blackbeard in law, and I guess Kobe fought against him to take over that island, which is interesting because Blackbeard is Rox's son, and Rox's son beat him to take the island because that was Rox's goal all along, one of his goals, right? A step towards the process. So that's a insane circle, right? And now Caribou, who is Ochoku's son, is now Blackbeard's hostage who knows everything about the ancient weapons. And so he's going to help him. You see? It's all there. It's all intertwined, man. Either way, the whole point of what they're doing is not just because of rocks. It's also mostly because of personal interest and the Davy Backs thing. So, how do you basically start a revolution? Because this is what it is. You're trying to take over the current power, which selfish reasons, but that's your goal. How do you do that with people that don't even want to do that? But for rocks, ambition looks crazy to the non-ambitious. Not saying that these other pirates weren't ambitious. They're big names and they go on to become great names. But this is not what they wanted. Their ambition did not lie there. And for Rocks, if you don't believe in this stuff, he looks like a crazy person. Rocks sounds like Blackbeard and Marineford. He's saying up to this point, this is the prologue to his life. He's going to use that island as a base, crush the Navy, destroy the Holy Land, and become the king. Harold's like, yo, your enemy is too big, which is, ironic coming from Harold, considering his size, obviously. He's like, I don't care. But Rock said something also profound, saying, it doesn't matter. No power lasts forever. Somebody's bound to do it. Where that's always the mentality was like, nobody's ever done this before. Why do you think you can? And Rox is like, why not? He says, Harold, this is the thing with power. There's no such thing as power that lasts forever. And we talk about that with Emu and the Reverie and some of the information we got there, where it's just like Dofi echoed those sentiments, saying the grip on power, it's becoming loose and looser. You better use it before you lose it. So Dofi, again, sometimes Dofi sounds like a soothsayer. That's how Dofi feels sometimes with the information he gives and just like some of his speeches and how it feels like he knows what's going to happen. But Rox was ambitious. He was ready. He felt like if Harold joined them, they would be unstoppable. Here's why I disagree with that. Again, he had very lofty goals with people that didn't have or share the same sentiment. Luffy can accomplish all the things that he does because everybody's willing to put their life on the line for Luffy. Most people here would not put their life on the line for Rox. That's the first thing. Secondly, with Harold, can you convince Elbaf to follow somebody like Rox, even in the midst of the reform and everything you've been trying to accomplish, to go against the world government? Again, you have even elders that you answer to. It just wouldn't work. But let's say Harold manages to do that. Adding Harold would not be enough. Everybody's not bought in. You don't have the facilities. Maybe if you started getting ancient weapons but everybody would have to buy in. And of course, Rox, I'm not mad at his ambitions and how he feels about it because this is how he's supposed to feel. And you see the blueprint for Blackbeard. Calculated, strong, ambitious, crazy, going after other pirates, recruiting, one goal, same goal, not friends. This is who Rox D. Zebek was, but he's also willing to put in the work. And this is the man that Loki became enamored with. Almost a blank canvas, but more confused than anything and lacking love and purpose. You hear a speech like this, it moves you. And Loki was moved. They said Loki found salvation. Salvation in his mind. So we saw in Loki's flashback, or in the flashback in Elbaf, Loki asked Rox to join. Rox beat him up and left. More than likely this after conversation with Harold. But they say Harold was asked like numerous times, received several invitations. So Rox could have come back to Elbaf several times just trying to ask him, yo, you sure you don't want to join? You sure? But it says Rox, his ambitions, it reached its fruition. I'm not sure it's after Big Mom and Kaido. He felt like, okay, I got a crew now. I got a nice squad that I can do what I need to do. Rox Pirates officially formed. Now let's sail. I gotta say, this is one of the more incredible chapters we've read, considering the ambitions of Rox, what he was able to accomplish, and what he goes on to accomplish, even his downfall and his erasure. These are things that we have not seen in the story. It's almost like the narrator said, the first and the last time. Like, this guy is like that. And again, he's making a lot of people look bad. I'm even side-eyeing Roger, where Roger found out about the history, and Roger was like, all right, I'm out. You know, this ain't for me. Rox is like, yo, let's do it. Somebody got to do it. And I'm not denouncing all the others, the Whitebeards, the Rogers, the Luffy's. No. But Rox is just a special type of person. Not saying I agree with everything that he believes in, but man, he was willing to put his money where his mouth was. Put his life on the line. He was married to fighting against admirals, killing him. Seen Emu step, all right, cool. I'll be back, brother. You got it right. You got it right now. But then even having the drive to recruit all these people, having the bounties, this guy, all right, I'm going to go after him. In my opinion, you have no choice but to respect Rox D. Zabek, considering what he is and what he goes on to be. And even, again, we don't know if he's dead. He said he'll be back. That could mean so many different things. Could be, obviously, through his son. Could have found a way to live on longer. But I'm a Rox D. Zabek stan. Guys, give me your thoughts. How do you feel about everything Rox did? What was your favorite thing that Rox accomplished? Let me know. Because when you're going through and you're assessing these moments, even Harold, that's such an impressive king, man. Oh, gosh, One Piece is really good this week. But give me your thoughts. Like the video if you did. Subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Follow me on Twitter, B.D.A. Follow me on Instagram, B.D.A. Thank you to my patrons. I appreciate you guys so much. This would not be possible without my patrons. Thank you, guys. But again, like the video, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next one, man. Peace.